What I want you to do right now is imagine that you're out at a social gathering and you see somebody who you'd really, really, really like to talk to. So you walk up, you initiate a conversation, you're laughing, you've got a lot of chemistry, the chemistry's escalating, you're having more and more fun, both consenting adults. And you say, you know what, we're gonna go hang out at maybe an after party or maybe some kind of restaurant or whatever. And so you're having so much fun together. You're both having an incredible night. So you wind up going out to a little after party, and maybe as you're there, maybe you start kissing a little bit, and then maybe you say, oh, cool, I have this fun thing at my crib, and you wind up going back, and next thing you know, it's the two of you, both adults, consenting adults, a lot of consent, and you're having a lot of fun, and that fun is building and building and building, and like two adults who can do what you want with your lives, you wind up hooking up, and it feels really, really good. And, maybe you're making out a little bit and you pull a condom out. And then you think to yourself, I could use a condom, or we could raise the stakes. And, you kind of think to yourself, well, if I'm eating a sandwich, do I want to eat a sandwich inside a Ziploc bag, or do I want to taste the fucking sandwich? And maybe you're making out with the girl and she goes, I don't like those. I want to feel you. I just want to feel you. I can't get pregnant. Don't worry. It's not that time of the month. It's not going to happen. I can't get pregnant. I just want you to feel me. I just want you to feel me. I just want you to feel so good, baby. I want you to feel good. I want you to feel so good. And you're like, I also am Timmy the retard, and I also want to feel good. And you slide in. And it feels really, really good. And your eyes roll in the back of your head. And you think, what an incredible decision this was. So you had a great night. Maybe you sleep over, maybe you don't. Whatever's your preference. Whatever's your preference. And you go home and you had a nice night. Maybe a couple weeks later you get a little phone call. Maybe you get a text. You can describe this part of it. Describe this part of it. Describe this part.
Well... What an amazing point to start at. We go through these times when we're out meeting people, having fun, all this different stuff. And in our minds, when we're meeting somebody, is in a different spot. And it's a beautiful spot, just like Owen was just describing. We're drunk, but sober, but drunk with sex, drunk with seduction. And it's a great experience. But after a night out being casual, you're not protecting yourself properly. You're not being responsible in these ways. And couple weeks later, couple months later, sometimes you get that phone call, and in that phone call, everything changes. And for a guy, when he goes through this, it goes in all sorts of different directions. And I've heard the story many a times. I've experienced it myself, all these different things. You get angry. You start thinking that your life is over. But at the same time, you're thinking, wait a minute, I could be a dad. This could work. I want to protect her. I want to be there for her. I want to do the right thing. And all these things are right. But the situation of being in that conflict is wrong, because when we're in conflict, when we're alone, when we're thinking about something which we didn't expect and we're blindsided by it, that's a hard place to grow wisdom from, responsibility from, and a great life from. When we're in situations, when we are bringing life into this world, it should come from a stable point. But back to this situation, we get that phone call. We start thinking our life is over. We start thinking how we could get out of it. We start doing our bargaining with God, with life, with all this different stuff. Our projection of our future completely changes. We start going, man, I had a career. I had a dream. I had a goal. And right now, my goal now has to change from a point which I didn't expect it to be, and start thinking of, man, how can I make this work? How do I get out of it? And we enter in a point where we're thinking bad thoughts, which should never come into our minds as empowered men. And this is one of the problems. It's terrible. And what we'll probably talk about is how this can unfold into not just disempowering your life, but also turning into a male tragedy. And that's what we want to avoid here.
Yeah, so basically what happens, and I can tell you, I've had this happen to me one time. It was with a girl who's a lot of fun. We had an amazing weekend. And I remember getting that phone call a couple weeks later, and it was like, babe, I'm pregnant, and she was actually in New York. I was in LA. And, it's one of the most shocking things I've ever experienced. And what wound up happening was about 6 weeks later, she actually wound up having a miscarriage. But for those 6 weeks, this was an incredible, incredible experience that I went through because everything in my life, I'm trying to curate at the highest possible level. I mean, if you look at, this is kind of a simple thing, but even if you just take a shot of the house, maybe just do that, right? It's like I try to organize everything perfectly. I live in the Hollywood Hills, I have a view. I do a lot of crazy parties here. I like to have, this is kind of dumb, but like say that you just look at my shoes, like I'm wearing like the hard to find Jordan shoes that cost $1,000 instead of the normal Jordan shoes that none of you even know why I bought that. Like, you know what I mean, right? Like, it's like, I like to curate my life in the specific and exact way that I want. And, if I'm going to have children with a woman, I want it to be with a woman who is very, very vetted, who I've gotten to know over a long period of time. And actually, one of the crazy parts for me was when I found out that I had a girl pregnant, again, it wound up in a miscarriage, which is incredibly sad as well. And I'll get into that later. I just been with a girl who was a million out of 10, one of the most incredible women on the planet. And then somehow I'd gone into my mind and seen if that would work. And I'm, probably overly nitpicking that. And then the joke's on me because right after that ends and I've spent 3 years nitpicking if this would be the right situation to have more children. And all of a sudden I'm about to have a child with somebody who I barely even know. And this girl is truly one of the most fun women I've ever met in my life. And I love her dearly and I'll love her till the day I die. But the funny thing was, as I got to know her, I realized she's going to be an amazing mother someday. But at that point, she was not even close to being ready. In fact, I would say it would be, on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as her being ready at that point in her life. And she'll be a 10 out of 10 someday. But at that point of her life, it might have been a 1 or a 2 out of 10. And so I realized wow, I'm going into a situation where I have not vetted. I haven't got to know this person. Her and I wound up becoming very close. We had so much fun and she's going to crush it as a mother when she's ready. But the point being was, this was completely the opposite of how I envisioned my life going. And even for me, when she wound up having a miscarriage, I'm not somebody who like anytime that I would have a kid, I'm pretty much going to welcome it in this world no matter what. And I rolled out the red carpet for that kid who never wound up being born. But I even felt a tremendous guilt, feeling some feelings of relief, even though I was also very sad, feelings of relief around that miscarriage, which again is a total mindfuck. So I want to put in perspective for you that 6 weeks was like being in this tornado that just wouldn't stop. There's people, maybe you, who are watching this video right now, who wind up not winding up with a miscarriage and winding up having the kid. And we're going to talk in this video about the things that can happen when you do that. But in addition, while it sometimes can work out, statistically, sometimes it can work out with this person that you just met, it often doesn't. And frankly, even in a relationship, and this has happened to you twice, you can be in a relationship, but the person you get into a relationship with is not always the person who you end it with. And there can be dramatic personality shifts from somebody who loves you and would die for you to somebody who by the time the relationship's done, thinks very differently and is in a totally different point of view because they flip because of the pain of maybe the breakup and it's hard for them to process it and they demonize you or whatever else, right? And it's human nature sometimes to feel that way. So this is honestly one of the hardest, craziest things that I've ever personally been through. And so the reason that Steve is here to talk, and maybe you could load up his YouTube. So if you want to check this out, we're going to talk about the tip of the iceberg here. Okay, we'll probably talk about an hour, who knows how long, whatever's appropriate. But if you want to see horror stories beyond your wildest dreams, I'm talking horror stories that are so fucked that you can't even imagine, go to Steve's YouTube where he talks about this stuff and he will go much, much further down the rabbit hole. We're gonna give you the lay of the land here to sort of set the stage. But if you want to see the most fucked up shit that you've ever seen and how bad this can get, particularly because about a third of custody cases wind up contentious, and then a percentage of those wind up in either party making shit up about each other. And so percentage-wise, as soon as you have unprotected sex with someone, or even if you have protected sex and then the condom breaks, or there's just a fuck up or the contraception fails for whatever reason, as soon as you do that, statistically speaking, you are at risk of falling into that not huge percentage, but a very real percentage that's a lot bigger than you think, where people just start making up a bunch of crazy shit in order to win the custody dispute because each party is blowing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, to win the custody dispute. They want to win, and they know that if they just say some crazy shit, they win it. They win almost instantly. So they're like, why spend tens of thousands more, hundreds of thousands more to fight this when I could just say this? And it winds up happening, and it actually happened to him. saying that he was like this like bad dad and all this stuff, and wound up just imploding his life for like a decade. So what wound up happening with Steve was he actually wound up creating, and he's an OG coach, by the way. So he knows our whole culture, he knows our whole lifestyle. Me and him go out. We actually did an Nepali Coast hike back in 2006. First time I ever hiked Nepali Coast was with Steve. So that was like some crazy shit. That was before even YouTube was famous, and we didn't even know what to expect. We just went and hiked it. So we've known each other for years, and he knows our whole culture very well. He's been part of it. And the basic thing that I would say is that Steve's background now is helping other guys through this kind of thing. So I can explain this at a decent level, but the level that he's about to go into this with is hundreds of times deeper and further than I can go because he lives this. So basically what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to kind of delve into this with the description of what it's like to get that phone call, what it's like to wind up in court, the different ways that this kind of thing plays out, so that you can, and the main goal here is, and the reason I kind of started this video kind of funny with like the sort of sexual imagery was we're going to get into all this heavy stuff, right? And it's going to be information overload, and it's going to be more than you can even remember. If you can just take one thing from this video is, I need you to connect unprotected sex, aka condom plus pull out, condom in a plastic protective case, so it's not loose in your pocket and it breaks. When you're having sex, you're like, oh, this feels so good all of a sudden. Oh, amazing, right? Never knew. This is such a great condom brand. It's called the Broken Condom brand. So I need you to make it where the condom's not going to break. I need you to pull out. I need you to be careful. Even if you're in a relationship, whatever contraceptive is being used, check and see. Someone's saying they're on the pill. Like I remember I had an ex who told me, right when we broke up, yeah, I'd skip the pill all the time. I kind of wanted you to knock me up. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. And love that girl to death, but she was a freaking a little bit going on up there in the brain, right? So, so again, dodge a bullet on that one, dodge a nuclear bomb. But I need you to connect the idea of how good it feels to not use protection and how being tempted in that. And then while you're in this kind of sober but kind of sex drunk part of the brain, I need you to identify that, and through the haze, like you have to be like, wait a minute, no, and you got to put it on, okay? And unfortunately, it's fucking amateur hour not to do that, and you can build your whole entire life. You can have your overpriced Jordans and your fancy house and all this shit that you fucking built, and somebody who has not made any of that sacrifice, somebody who has not put in the work that you put in, they just get to stumble into that by luck. Almost like an animal trap where, some dumb animal, it's not, this animal's beautiful, but it doesn't have a working brain the way a human does, sees like, this little trap that's been set up with like, a honeycomb in it or some other animal in it. It just goes in, boom, the spike goes down on it. And then even as it's dying, it's like, trying to eat the treat that it went for. And literally you're just like, oh, you just walk on in there. Oh, feels good. And next thing you know, everything that you've built can be, you're dragged into custody disputes in court. You're dragged into crazy financial audits, conflict, not getting to see your kids. You don't even know if it's your kid, by the way. She says she's pregnant. You don't know that it's your kid. It drags you into a realm of shit. And by the way, we're going to be talking about men in here. He's going to mention a bit what women go through as well. We're talking about the male part because that's not talked about that often, so that's why we're going to cover it. He also specializes in that. But I want to tell you, I have female friends and also exes that have been knocked up by idiot fucking losers who don't have the money to pay for the kids and are deadbeat dads. One of my exes that I love dearly got knocked up by a guy who's, actually know the guy is really cool, dude. I love the guy. He's really cool, but he's fucking broke, and he has a lot of his own personal turmoils and struggles with drug use. Great fucking guy. Love the guy, but he's got a lot of problems. And she basically lives off of $600 a month in support from him. She pays $1,000 a month in daycare, drops her kid off, can't even use the support from him to pay for the daycare, and works all day to pay for daycare. So she can't even pay her bills and sits there with a kid. This girl was stunning. It's actually an ex-girlfriend. I'm kind of proud of it. Stunning. Was one of the most popular girls you'd ever see in New York. Had all these guys after her, getting helicoptered around, dating billionaires, all this stuff. And the next thing you know, she's living in a fucking trailer in Arizona and barely struggling to survive, all because she got knocked up by a guy who couldn't afford to pay for it. So by the way, women get super fucked over in this equation. This is not like a women screw the men thing. Men and women can screw each other over, but we're going to focus more on the men part, and we'll probably bring up women a little bit. But anyway, I just say, let's think about the emotions, what it feels like, the process, court, child support, all that stuff, and the reality that when you bust that nut, bust that cream pie, or even go in raw and pull out, you're like, oh, I've always pulled out. Pulling out works. I'm great at pulling out. I'm a pro. And the reality that kicks in when eventually those long odds work against your favor.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I want to make clear here is a lot of times I'll see in comment sections of guys saying, never get married, never have kids, you can be smart about it, all these different things. And the people that get trapped the worst in it are the people that are the most unprepared. And if we're being sexual with people, if we're dating, if we're having fun, if we're doing normal things in the best way, and we think we don't have to prepare for this discussion, you're walking into a trap. And that's really important. So when we're in that mode of when we're dating and, we're not used to dating women, we don't realize that our brains change massively in intimate moments. And women's do too. So men and women start thinking things that we would never think before. Things like, we don't need to wear a condom, we could have fun, I'm on the pill, all that sort of stuff. It's very, very common.
It's called nature finds a way, like in Jurassic
Nature
Park.
finds a way.
Hundreds of millions of years of evolution fucking with your brain.
Yeah. So one of the things that happens is when we enter into this, we get that phone call and we find out we might be a dad. And again, Owen said anything that happens wrong in a child custody case, in an unplanned pregnancy, and all the different stuff we're talking about is bad for both men and women. Statistically, we hear a lot of horror stories for men, and that's very, very true. I don't want to dispute that, but anybody who gets screwed over in this, it loses, it's bad, it should be avoided, and hopefully you can get something out of this. But when we get that call, we get that, and we're like, man, what can happen? How can we make this work? I'm so angry at her. I can't believe she did that to me. And we have that conflict there. And then as Owen was breaking down in here, he was saying, man, God, I get the call that there's a miscarriage, or there could be other discussions about different things that happen when people are pregnant. And we shouldn't have to think those thoughts. We shouldn't have to go there. It changes you as a person. And it's a conflict of when you're going like, man, I got that call about a miscarriage. Part of me is happy and part of me is devastated. And that is a hard thing to walk with. You think you can outframe it. You think you can get in a different logical state about it. You want to avoid that. But let's say it goes on further. Let's say we start going towards the pregnancy. When you have people that were brought together once or a few times in a casual relationship, and then they're forced to be brought together when there's a pregnancy happening, you're trying to plan for it, that's conflict, and it gets crazy. Hormones change. Hormones are going to change in you. You're going to have that same conflict of wanting to be there and not wanting to be there. You're going to seek out different advice on it. You're going to get the lowest hanging fruit of advice on the internet of what to do as a man on both ends of being a good man, which is something usually unrealistic, and being a player guy that's going to have a frame or whatever. You're not going to get the right support system that you need through this. And it's crazy. Emotions flare up, her emotions are going to flare up, and you're going to get fed up with all this sort of different stuff. Families are going to get involved. Your family's going to get involved. Her family's going to get involved. But let's say we go to the pregnancy, it goes to term, and you're a father. You have a little boy, a little girl, and it's going to change a part of you, but at the same time, it's going to change a part of her. And if there's that conflict there, and again, we have custody cases of people who are married and whatnot and these types of things, but this is that unplanned pregnancy, man, a lot could happen. So a fight happens, you leave, you stay, you take care of the baby. This is a very common thing that is going to happen. In that fight, she's going to take that baby as property, not because she's a bad woman, not because of all these different social things, and those could play into a factor, but that is part of just that general natural trigger of a mother and their son or daughter. She's going to want to have it as property. She's going to want to have it and protect it. And when that gets exploited in so many different ways of our culture, then that goes into, I feel unsafe, I feel in danger, I feel unsafe about you, and my child, who I'm bonded with an influx of hormones, instinct, all these different things that kept us alive for hundreds of thousands of years, which shaped the human species, are now going against you. And man, it could get really, really nasty. One of the first things that is going to happen is she is going to take that baby away from you, or not always, but in these higher conflict things that happen, she will take that baby away from you. She will feel that she's in danger and that baby is in danger. And when that happens, man, a whole bunch happens.
And by the way, just to jump in, the reason why this can happen is because this is not someone who you vetted You don't know each other. You haven't built a relationship. And occasionally you can build a relationship on the fly, but it's like an NBA basketball team, right? There was the 2008 Celtics, and they actually came together in one year and they won a championship. Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Lewis, and all these guys, they won a championship first year. But rarely would you see an NBA championship happen in the first year. Usually you need, like the Denver Nuggets this year, continuity, right? So having a child with somebody, in the best case scenario, you've known them at least 2 years. I mean, that would be on the low end, would be about 2 years. I mean, there's even things like personality disorders that may not come up for even up to 2 years, right? Like someone could have borderline personality disorder, or NPD or something like that. And that's not even, you're not even going to see, I mean, if you know what you're looking for, you might see some of the signs, but the early signs of a lot of personality disorders are actually the person being really, really nice and being fucking perfect. So what you're referring to is like, it's not that automatically every time someone's pregnant, they're going to, feel in danger and just like, they're going to go all crazy, but you don't know. You statistically don't know. So when you're having unprotected sex, I mean, it's theoretically possible that you met your soulmate and knocked each other up and it went perfect. I mean, that's about a 2% possibility, 3% possibility. There's about a 2 to 3% possibility that it's like a full-on psychopath. And then everywhere else is somewhere within a spectrum. And you don't know, it's like rolling a dice. You don't know where in that spectrum it's going to land. For example, the girl that I was with, probably the most fun girl I met in my entire life. We'd never had a fight. We get along amazing. But was also in a spectrum of preparation to be a mom, just wasn't something she'd ever thought about. And there's, it was just going to be something beyond my wildest dreams. And again, she's going to kill it someday. She's going to crush it with that. I believe in her. She's so determined and all that stuff. But at that time, she just wasn't ready. And, if you think that, winning an NBA championship in a year is hard, this is even harder. Okay. So and again, this is for guys, this is for girls too, but like, I can especially say myself being a man, you're doing every single thing to curate your life. Vetting, curating, working, arranging, building, planning, having dreams. And that way that you thought that your life was going to pan out, boom, within 1 second because of one decision, completely out the window, and you have no fucking idea how this is going to turn out. So like what Steve is talking about, because you have to understand, Steve runs a group. And if you're somebody who winds up in this situation, he's the best guy that I could think of that you could ever go to. But in his group, he has guys that are coming that are going through, stuff that's maybe a little bit bad, all the way to a spectrum of guys that are literally have like a weapon on them that are about to commit suicide. And there's a lot of guys driven to suicide over this. If you want to see some of this stuff, go to his channel. It's some of the heaviest watching you'll ever see. Okay, this is like you might think I'm kidding here. Like, we're not going to kind of go fully down the rabbit hole today, but it is some of the heaviest stuff that you'll ever see. And the reason being is because once the two people in custody become competitive and they're burning tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to win their side of it, and they realize that if they just say some crazy shit that they can bypass all that, a percentage of people take that low blow and they do it, and then these guys wind up with their lives in tatters, worse than you could ever imagine, and some of them wind up committing suicide. They're separated from their kids, all sorts of stuff. But anyway, I'd like you to just continue down this path of pregnancies happen now.
Yeah, so...
all for a nut.
So...
all to go,
So when we get into this, when a pregnancy is happening and a birth happens, there is a flood of different hormones. And if there's a high stress situation, whether or not there is a personality disorder, it can mimic characteristics of that. So borderline personality disorder, you can have traits of that come in postpartum depression and things like that a woman goes through naturally, and with all the stresses in the world and the stress of a relationship that she's afraid of. One of the things that is so important for women just in general, especially in motherhood, is security. And if she's feeling insecure in those ways, whether that's financial or you're just not there in those different ways, man, it could explode in all sorts of different directions. And a lot of times that isn't communicated until she's mad about it. And when she's mad about it, she could want to run. Now, when that happens, first wave is going to be talking to her friends, talking to her family, talking to the people that are going to listen. So this could be that Steve is dangerous, Owen's dangerous, you're dangerous, whatever it is, those sorts of things. And the family is going to take your side. In our culture, we care about the protection of women, and that's an important thing. We care about the protection of kids. That's an important thing. But for some reason, we don't always have sympathy for the man in that situation, and they're not going to listen to you as much. And that's just common. Hope that changes. But in this situation, it goes to social media. A lot of the times your reputation is attacked to win an argument, not to necessarily make you a bad dad, but to win an argument that she is a good mother. And when this happens on the flip side, because again, it happens on both sides of it, when a dad takes away a child from a woman, he's going to start doing the same thing. He's going to talk to his friends about what a danger the mother is. He's going to talk to his family. He's going to talk to her family. And we split sides. And it's not to say that she's a bad mother, although he might literally be saying that. It's to say that he's a good father and the best father. When that starts to escalate, to attorneys getting involved. And actually, let's back up here. When that escalates to things like the police being called, the police perhaps notify Child Protective Services, CPS, or DCFS, depending on whatever state you're in, that's when things get crazy. And when they get crazy with that, the law becomes very particular. And I think every man needs a crash course, not only in this situation, and maybe a really thorough course in this situation, but in what the law is going to look like.
Yeah, and by the way, I need to jump in here because we don't want to characterize, like, because you're kind of like just jumping over this part of it, but like, statistically, this is not every single time that you knock somebody up that, like, it goes to this point, right? Like, ideally it doesn't. So if you did knock somebody up, we're not trying to tell you like this is the automatic thing, right? There's a lot of situations where it can wind up positive. But statistically, I mean, can you actually know some of the stats on this? Statistically, what percentage does unplanned pregnancies become contentious, would you say, statistically?
Yeah, so it depends on how you define contention, but contention means that there's a high conflict, right? It needs attorneys. CPS gets involved, the police get involved, these types of things, and they're fairly dangerous. But they say about a third, and it depends on what state you're in and the statistics that you're looking at and how those statistics are gathered and fielded and all these different things. But
so what that means is that if you have an unplanned pregnancy, statistically speaking, there's about 1/3 of a chance it can become contentious. And by the way, I would be curious even what percentages of divorces, do you happen to know the stats on whether it's divorce or cohabitation but with a kid? What percentage of that becomes contentious? Do you happen to know those numbers?
No, I don't, but it can happen on all ends. And so really what this is for is that you need to understand, to see the signs if this is happening, how to protect and prepare yourself. You don't protect and prepare yourself to go on the offensive and obliterate somebody, whether you're a man or a woman. You learn how this process works and how to protect yourself so that you could be a good parent, so that you could bring things back to an even keel. That's always what you're trying to do. And in the highest conflict, if we get to that tonight, in the highest conflict, you want it to come back to an even keel. So if you do have to go hard in court and get the best lawyer and all this sort of stuff and go on the offensive, it's not to destroy the other parent. This causes huge problems. Parental alienation is a very real thing. It's horrible. It has massive psychological effects that map the same types of abuse that we fear and hate in our culture, meaning that if somebody is physically abused, if a child is physically abused, there are parallels, a long list of parallels that happen in parental alienation. And what that actually means is you keep one parent away from the other, and you trash talk them, you physically keep them away, and you kind of brainwash the child. That's going to have lasting psychological effects that will make that child's life hard for the rest of their lives. And they're going to be spending the rest of their lives, if they can get to the right people, in therapy trying to reverse that. So it's a big deal that we want to bring things back to an even keel to be a good parent.
Yeah, all because you wanted to go raw. So, and again, Steve is going to give you an overwhelm of information here, and you're not going to memorize all of it. I'd recommend you go to his channel, learn more about it, but you're not going to memorize all of it. You're certainly not, at least today. You don't have to. You just have to remember one thing. These are the things that you're opening yourself up to when you're hitting it raw, okay? Or if you fuck up on contraceptives. And what I want to do next is I want to go into, okay, so we've talked about, the girl's pregnant and how that proceeds. Now, you've talked about usually how the ruptures happen or how the ruptures can happen. And it doesn't mean that will happen for sure. In theory, maybe the two of you will stay together. But again, it wasn't someone who you chose via vetting process. I'm going to be honest with you here. Okay, I'm not trying to impose my beliefs on you. I'm actually pro-life. So no matter what person I'd get pregnant, I'm going to keep it. Doesn't matter who. I don't care if Steve got pregnant because I shook his hand. We're keeping that kid, okay? That's my background and my faith and so on and so forth. I don't press on anybody else, okay? Some people wind up getting an abortion. But, I mean, let's even cover that before we even go into it, because I bet you a lot of people think, like, I could just talk them into an abortion. Like, any thoughts maybe on that one?
Man, well, that's a huge topic, touchy subject, all this sort of stuff. But you have to realize that There are many times where somebody can be pro-choice. A woman can be pro-choice, but that does not mean that she wants to terminate her pregnancy. And to force somebody into that, you also have to realize that there's going to be a massive psychological blow to you or her, whether you think so or not. It's a huge thing, and it's a huge commitment. And for you to go through that, man, you really, really, really have to understand that it's not a quick fix. It's not something that, oh, my hands are washed and it's all done. It's something that's going to stick with both parties for a long time.
Did you happen to catch what happened with Walter from Fresh and Fit? And it's online. I don't know the full story behind it, but he actually got a girl pregnant.
Yeah.
And so you saw him on the phone. He's like, hey, like, we could kind of, like, I don't want to quote him. He's a really cool guy and I don't want to like misquote him, but basically like it was along the lines of like, hey, like, we don't have to keep the kid. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, no, like in my religion, I'm going to keep the kid. Kind of how I feel, to be honest. I'd be the version of that in that case. And he's like, yeah, but we don't have to keep it. And she's like, no, we're going to keep it. And then and I don't know the full story, so I don't want to misquote it. I'm somehow. But what I saw when I just kind of flipped around was I was like, wait a minute, she's going on all these other podcasts talking about this. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine that. Like you're like a podcaster, have a little accident. And, who knows? I don't even know if this is like done for attention or like what the background of this is, but like it looks real, like from the surface. And the thing is like, next thing you know, she's on podcasts. The kids are eventually going to see this sometime when it comes out. And even if, again, like look at Walter, it's like, he's like a guy who's like making really good money. He's got all the nice watches, the diamonds, podcast is crushing it, cool car, everything's going good. And immediately, boom, she gets access. She stumbles into that whole world that he's built because of that one error, and it was an inch away from happening to myself. And I actually believe that if she keeps the baby, that he will be very happy. And I think that like in the end, when you have the baby, even if you had the worst case scenario happen and you were tormented with like, torture devices for a decade, in the end, you'll be happy that you kept your baby. Okay. That's my personal view. I've never known someone who didn't. I mean, you have two relationships that went sideways, and I'm sure that you're still happy to have your 4 kids. And it's all, and you could talk about that, but like, it's always a good thing, but you have to understand, like, even though I'm sure that you're happy that you have your children, imagine if that could have been, say it was like the same kids, like nothing about them changed, like the same human beings, but with a woman who you'd gotten to vet, got to get to know, avoided all the court, the chaos. Steve even wound up in a crazy situation where he wound up losing his freedom for a couple of days, and like shit can go sideways due to custody and saying that he was a bad father and all this stuff. And so the point being is like, imagine you could have avoided all that and just had it a more traditional way. And it was like someone who you got to know and like all that stuff. So it's like, again, if it happens to you, in the end, you're always going to be happy. And you can even talk to Steve or look up Steve and he can help you through that process. But you could have that same happiness vetting it, like going through it like a more normal way. But anyway, maybe talk a little bit about the conversations where like these guys think that they're going to talk them into an abortion. Because I think a lot of guys on here are probably not like myself and they actually want to get an abortion. That's a lot more common. I'm kind of like a weird one like that. So for the guys that would actually try to talk them into an abortion, try to explain maybe a little bit about how like it doesn't wind up happening and then kind of how that proceeds like from there would be awesome.
Well, I mean, look, if somebody doesn't want to get an abortion, you're not trying to talk anybody into doing something. You're trying to state your case. And this is one of the things that I think is important for both men and women when they enter into this. If this comes up, it is not just your choice and it's not just her choice. I do agree it's her body, it's carrying a life in her and all these different things. That's very important. But you have to understand as a guy, you need to start bringing perspective to this whole thing and you need to make the decision together. So 2 different parties are coming together to make one decision, an agreement. Right? So it's not a manipulation. It's not some trickery or something where we get advantage of it. But you do need to start understanding at that point that, and this is why I believe a man's choice and saying it is important. It's not denying any of the woman's responsibility in this. It's a heavy burden to carry, all that sort of different stuff. But you are going to have to pay child support. You're going to have to be a father. And you're going to be involved in that child's life. One of the greatest things about the United States is that it makes dads step up and be dads. Now, one of the bad things about the United States court system is that oftentimes it makes it very easy to take custody away from men in times where it shouldn't be taken away. And you have to understand that this is a huge thing. So this is a huge commitment you're entering, and this is the discussion that you need to have. At the point of when you are in this zone, and even before it, like if you're just watching this going like, man, I may never have kids, you should start educating yourself on the court system and the process in this, because all of the mistakes, all the tragedies that I hear about that men have, all happen because they screwed up in their first or second court appearance because they didn't know what was going on. Now that might seem overwhelming and whatnot, but man, I just wish, this is part of my thing, is I want to bring education to this. And again, on my YouTube channel, there's like tons of tutorials on this. There's workshops on the court system and what you should do. But first and foremost, if you're in this situation, if you're in a situation where abortion is on the table, you need to start looking at things like how child support is calculated in your state. So what you'll do is if you live in California, you do child support, California, type it into Google, and you look at the calculator of that state. If you're in Texas, if you're in Oregon, you look at that. You also can go, and when you look through this, it's huge. It's a mathematical equation. And it's a mathematical equation that can also be decided upon a judge, or will be decided upon with a judge or the attorney general or whatever. And mistakes can be made. And if you walk into that without the right information, if you feel guilty, if you don't know what's going on, you could agree and sign to something that is very, very hard to change. In the state of Texas, if it's signed upon for 3 years, you're married to it. If you lose your job, you still owe that money. Now, in states like Florida, if you lose your job, you can get it amended. But some states, you can't do that. You need to understand this. The point of almost becoming a father, whatever the situation is, and if you're discussing something like termination, if it's legal where you're getting it, man, that is a huge thing that you need to look over. You also should go down to your county clerk's office. So if you live in Los Angeles County, you look up Los Angeles County clerk, those sorts of things, and they should have a packet or some sort of guide on custody. What determines that? What determines child support? So custody is visitation, who's responsible for schools, choices in the child's life, doctors, all these different things. But if you don't have a grip on that, and you sign something and you have 50-50 visitation, you guys go 3 days on, 3 days off, right? That seems like it's 50-50, but it may actually be that the primary parent gets more decision-making and gets child support for that, and you might not know what you're signing. And again, this is a hard thing to reverse. The other thing, if you really want to look, and I'm really critical of a lot of guys I see online who talk about this, they say if you go down and watch family court in progress, you're going to be horrified in what happens. That can happen, but you shouldn't be thinking that way, because again, we want to win in our lives. We want to make the right choices. So we want to start informing ourselves. We want to start seeing where dads or moms screw up in front of a judge, where they speak out of turn. They come in unprepared. They get in a yelling match in front of the judge, making it impossible for that judge to rule upon. And then you can actually see where some lawyers or some people go in pro se, meaning they're representing themselves, and they do a good job. What did they do, and how can I repeat that? Right? So if you're in a situation with any contention, you should definitely go watch some court cases. They're open to the public. You can just go and sit down and watch. It might seem a little bit uncomfortable. They might ask why you're there. You just say you're observing. And if you are in a custody case and you know your judge, you could do that. But before that, I would definitely look at your county clerk's website to see how custody, child support, visitation, all these different things are determined, because you need to have an awareness of it. If it's something that seems really, really difficult, that is going to drastically change your life, and the conversation about termination is there, man, you need to have a factor. You need to have that factored into your conversation. You need to be able to articulate it. And the other thing that I would say to that is, if you do not have a support system around you, and that's not just men, that's not just your family or friends. It should be a men's group or people that are experienced in this, or if you're a woman's group that can help you think clearly in it. Because under any stressful situation, if you don't have different people advocating for you, running your thoughts, bouncing them off and all these different things, if you do not have that, you're almost guaranteed to make a mistake, overlook something, or make an impulsive decision. And these are choices that are going to be very hard to reverse once they are signed by a judge. Huge, huge thing.
Yeah, so basically, again, remember I said that it's going to be like information overload? I think what I'm trying to connect your brain to is, and then this is the rabbit hole, right? It's like all this shit, this torrent of shit unloaded on you, just because you wanted to feel I guess significantly better, not using contraceptives, not pulling out. Like, I'll tell some guys, I'll be like, bro, you've got to use a condom. You've got to pull out. And they'll always go, condom, man, pull out? Like a condom, man, pull out? You know, and it's, or, you know, they'll go, I'm really good at pulling out. Ho, ho, ho. Like, yeah, like I got the technique. It'll never happen to me. Look, I have one buddy who literally was on, and I love the guy to death, but damn it, he was on an airplane and he was raw dogging this girl on the plane. And then he told me that like the stewardess went by and he's like, so I just came in her because I didn't want to make a mess on the seat. I'm like, ah! You know, and this guy's got like 5 cars. He's a fucking G. And like, he doesn't give a fuck, bro. Okay, this guy's like a stud, okay? Like you couldn't see a guy that gets more girls than this guy. And I would literally hammer him. I'm like, just get a girlfriend, man. Get a girlfriend. Because I know he's going to knock somebody up. Then he wound up knocking up his girlfriend. Actually, he had a miscarriage. So funny how he knocked up one of his girlfriends. And then he had another girlfriend. And he's like, and the thing is like, this guy's got like so much going on. Like he has no incentive to have a girlfriend whatsoever. Like no reason on earth to have a girlfriend. And he was always mad at me because I was like, your girlfriend's great. Like, and she was a great girlfriend. But I'm like, your girlfriend's great. Keep your girlfriend. His girlfriend's like a perfect 10. Loves him to end of the earth. But even to the perfect 10 who loves the end of the earth, he's just like, nah, I want to be single again. And, you know, the dude's just like crushing life so hard. And so I'm like, bro, you've got to keep your girlfriend because I know that girlfriend is the dam between him knocking up some random girl. And she actually happened to have a diaphragm, so, or an IUD or whatever you call that, right? So the thing is like, I knew that like he's safe with her, but as soon, like he literally does believe that he can just pull out and that he's never going to get a girl pregnant, even though he's already had one miscarriage. And it's just a matter of time. And like myself, this is somebody who has like you don't own 5-6 cars, mansion, you know, you've built up your career, built up a social circle, coaching celebrities. You don't go do all that if you don't care about the way that your life looks, right? Like he's even really good to his parents. So like, you know, I mean, it's just like a cool thing he does. But I'm just making the point, like, you don't build all that if you don't care that you have some degree of influence and control over what your life looks like. But what he doesn't realize is one of these random girls that he's messing with, and I know a ton of them, okay? And they're perfectly gorgeous, like so hot it wants to melt your fucking face off. And when you have a girl like that who's just kind of backing up into you, and he has all these, I mean, because he's the kind of dude where like, you know, a girl will be on the couch. I mean, look, like I mean, we get problems like this. Like he'll be doing a party, and I'll have like, you know, a couple girls that like I'm trying to meet up with, and like by the time I get to the party, it's already done. Like he's like, oh, did you send them? I'm like, bro, like you don't tell me. Like both? He's like, bro, I didn't know, you know, right? So like you know, he's the kind of dude like we'll be watching a movie and like next thing you just hear like, you're like, oh my God, you know, it's like it's just nonstop, right? But the problem is that's what Magic Johnson was like, you know? They used to say Magic Johnson, like he talked about like, you know, 5 in a day, and like, you know, he'd be in the sauna after games, they'd be coming on in, and then he wound up getting HIV, right? And it changed his life, and it changed his life profoundly. So, you know, in the same way, like my buddy, he's doing this, and he's thinking like, he doesn't want to have to use a condom. It's like, it just feels better, and you know, he knows how to pull out, and like, he will be very unlikely to make it to age 30 without knocking up at least a couple girls. And you don't think one of those girls is going to go, 5 cars, mansion, super cool guy, good genetics, good to his parents, you know, and go, let's see, option A, go back to working my shit job and struggling in my studio apartment that has an air mattress, a bong, and a cat, and maybe a vision board. Where the first thing on it says, make vision board, and they've checked that, and then they didn't do any of their visions. It's like, go to that. Or B, Prince Charming comes in, we have a baby together, and then I go in his 5 cars that are now half mine in my beautiful home with my Prince Charming man, hang out with his parents. Like that same girl that would have been, and again, I am the most pro-life you're ever gonna, I mean, I would rather, I'm gonna be real with you, like, and I like that we have 2 different perspectives here because I like both perspectives, but for me, I would rather die than do an abortion. Like I'd take a bullet for my unborn boy. I would do it, even though I was actually relieved when I had the miscarriage, I still would have had that baby, even though I felt relieved and I felt guilt over that. I would take a bullet for any baby. Like I would die for my children any day of the week, right? If the second I saw my kid, if I'd be put into a torture chamber, whether it's my unborn kid, born kid, doesn't matter to me. I will go to God when I die and ask God, I need to be there for my children. Please, even though you can do it, God, let me be there in spirit for my children. Like, that's just the way I am with my kids. I bring my kids everywhere, every event I do, everywhere I go. I fucking love my kids. I wish I had more kids. But the point is that I want more kids with somebody who I vetted, okay? And if it happens, it happens. And you make, just like I was going to, you make lemons out of lemonade and you make it work. But if that's not how you roll and you don't want fucking chaos in your life and you don't want to roll the fucking dice, avoid it. And again, my buddy, he's going to wind up with an unexpected kid because at some point, one of these girls is going to keep it. It's going to happen. And the thing is, I think what I'd love for you to do, what I think would be amazing would be kind of just queuing you up here, would be to talk about the tackiness. Like, I don't think people realize, like take my buddy who's like just lives in like luxury and style, and I don't think he understands the tsunami. Like, I'd love to even say that it's like a horror picture, but past that is fucking tacky. Like, imagine the DMV and Walmart, like the fluorescent lighting, like these like mainstream judges that may not even understand you, and just all that kind. Like, what is that like to just sit in court and just realize that you've done this to yourself?
Man, one of the worst feelings that you're ever going to have in the world, and it won't stop for a long time. It's a long process, especially if you don't do it right, is going in and having somebody that, I'm going to reference something from the 80s, but Joe versus the volcano in the beginning, it's all grayed out. They're all government workers. Nobody's happy. Everybody has pale skin. People just don't look healthy, and they're in an unhealthy environment. And that person is going to determine some of the most important decisions about your relationship with your child. That is horrible. And that decision, whether it's an attorney general's office, so part of the process is you're going to probably get some form of mediation through the attorney general, and that's what's going to determine and put on paper what your custody, visitation, and child support is. And that person is going through 20 people a day that they don't care about. They can't care about. That's part of their job, but they really don't care about it. And they just want to get done with your case. And if you're fighting, you're unprepared, you don't know what to do, you are going to have somebody who is, maybe not all of them, but a lot of what I've seen, the embodiment of not being a healthy person, not being a happy person, and certainly not caring about your future or even your child's future for that matter, even though they say they do. They are going to be deciding how you're going to be a father or a mother. That is horrible. And when you're sitting there and you make the argument that, no, I'm a good dad. No, I do this and that. I have it all down. I went over it with my friends and family about how I'm great about this. They don't care. They're going to look at a few things. Maybe they get influenced by some form of manipulation from the other party, whether that's from a mother or a father. And when people are fighting over this, it gets dirty. It gets primal. They're going to be done with your case. They're going to sign the paper. And you are going to be married now, not to a woman, not to a life, not to a future, but child support, visitation, custody that could be unfair for you because you were unprepared, and that is the rest of your life. And here's the other thing too. Everybody says 18 years. It's not. In a lot of states, it goes up to 23. If there's small things like autism or some form of any disability, it could go up to 28. If they're in college, it goes to 23 in most states, or it could go to 22, and you're going to be paying that. And not only that, it is going to be increased in some states by a set percentage. All states are different. You got to educate yourself on it, but this should be in your brain. And man, it might sound like too much information. There's a lot of this stuff that's on my channel and whatnot, but here's the thing. It's better to be prepared now and understand it rather than walking into a situation, the gray building, where nobody's happy. You walk through security, and the reason why you walk through security is because moms and dads get pissed off. There's a bunch of chairs where you're all sitting there, and she's going to be there with her family and her friends, and they're not going to be liking you. And you're going to be sitting there, maybe with no support, and you're waiting, and you're watching other moms and dads walk out of their mediation room upset, devastated, and you're about to walk in there. That is a horrible feeling. And you're going to be sitting there going, man, I wish I knew more. I wish I knew what was going on. And you're going to be thinking that even more when you get something that is unfair. And like Owen and I have been talking about, unfairness doesn't always happen. It doesn't just randomly happen to everybody, but it does happen, and it happens enough to educate yourself on it, because you don't want to be that 1/3 of the population of mothers and fathers that get screwed.
It's like anything in the government. I mean, there's like, what are the cool, this is kind of out there, but like, communism in theory is like this amazing system where everybody works for each other. But the reason it, has been proven to fail so many times is because anything run without a proper incentive system is just usually a fucking shit show. If you go to Russia during communist times, you have these factories that are making like, 2 left boots or things like that. Well, that's what you're going into with the fucking government.
Yes.
Is this system where it's like, it's not like a lean and mean run business where like everything's perfected. There's going to be, look, you might be someone who works in that system. We're not trying to offend you, because by the way, somebody could be watching. It's like, right. I work in that system and I do care. And, maybe you're one of those people that does care. Just like people often insult the public education system. And like in some cases, there's teachers that care a lot, but it's not everybody. And you don't know where you're going to land. So this is like, again, the main point being, when you're raw dogging it or not using you're not pulling out, not using protection, not making sure that the condoms aren't broken in your pockets. They've been sitting there for a week and you're kind of grinding them down and they break. But likewise, in a relationship, you don't even know if that person is properly using contraceptives or things like that. You have no idea. And what winds up happening is you wind up pulled into a world like, for, I don't know, average case person having sex might be 20 minutes or whatever it is for you. It could be longer or shorter. Just for that, you're pulled into a vortex. It's literally like you might have just put your dick into this fucking vortex and it's like, and it like sucks you and it's like, wah! For the next many, many years. And again, I want to emphasize, like, you'll always be happy to be a father. You'll always be happy to be a mother. You'll always love your child. But imagine you could have had that exact same child, no difference, in a situation that you had vetted and chosen, and you had, not been in contention with your partner, and you had a combined household, and you got along really well, and there wasn't all this madness, and there wasn't court involved, and you just loved being a parent, and it was just like the most beautiful thing ever, and like that's what I wish for everybody, and I actually have that with the mother of my kids. And so it's one of those things where, because we just are so chill with each other, but, it doesn't always have to work out like that. But the point is, like, even when her and I had a kid together, we knew each other so well. It was so heavily vetted, to the point that I'll even, bring guys to meet up with her so that they can actually see all the responsibilities that a mother has and how well she does it. So, but like, it's a nice thing for me to know, like, the mother of my kids, like, isn't going to go smoke a fucking crack pipe or something. And you know what? Look, I'm going to be real with you. The way the fucking world works, and she'll kill me for this, but she's going to fucking kill me. But it's like, nothing would surprise me. Like, even someone who's been solid for 10 years on a fucking dime could still switch up. But hey, at least you went in with the best odds you got and you want to have kids, right? So what I'm saying is, like, anybody can flip, but especially someone who you don't know, anything is fucking possible. And I think it would also be cool to mention the pulling apart of your finance, what that feels like to have someone probing into your finance. And the other thing I'd love to talk about too would be how someone who who seems so good at first can flip later on the way out, like an RAS flip. So finances and RAS flips, I think those would be another 2 great topics.
Yeah. So just really quick, if you start this process, and let's say you go through the Attorney General, that was the scenario we had before. That's an easy one. But let's say something goes wrong, or you start looking for lawyers, whatever. And I would really recommend that it's always a good idea to know lawyers and understand how they work. All lawyers, they say, are bad and all this sort of stuff. And that could be the case, but that doesn't mean you may not need one. And of course, you could go in pro se, but under high stress situation, I wouldn't recommend it. A lawyer's going to want a retainer. All family law attorneys charge usually double what regular attorneys charge, and you should be aware of that. The retainer, $2,500 maybe, but usually it's going to be something like $5,000, $7,000. Nobody has this. Nobody just goes, man, I have this lying around. And so you've got to come up with it. And that's a situation that you could end up in. One of the things that happens here, and there's kind of different ways where custody cases start, and it could be from an unplanned pregnancy. It could be from people trying to make it work. It could be from somebody who is married for a long time, and then years down the road, they get a divorce. And this is where these flips happen. Okay, so it's an emotional state. We're working with a force of nature from both fathers and mothers, but in my case, I'm generally working with dads, so we hear a lot about mothers flipping, but it happens both the same, and a tragedy is a tragedy, and they're both equally terrible, and I'd like to prevent as many of them as possible. It's not about winning on whatever side. It's about being a good parent for the kids that we're raising. So one of the things that happens oftentimes is if a woman is flipping, she's going to say, man, I don't feel safe. I don't feel that the child's safe. And if she starts calling the police and those police take a report, that report gets investigated by another party in the state. Depends on the state and the county that you live in, but that's when Child Protective Services come in. What's crazy here is a regular family law attorney is not good enough if you have Child Protective Services or DCFS come into your case or begin a case with you. You need an attorney that is specific to that. Again, this might sound like information overload, but these are the things you need to understand. If that box gets checked in your situation, you need to start looking and interviewing attorneys and being able to fund those attorneys that understand that case. If there's personality disorders or things like that, again, you need to get an attorney that has gone to trial and hopefully won, but at least is experienced in how you can prove that to a court, the type of evidence you need for fighting personality disorders and whatnot, or different types of abuse that can happen to kids. You need to look at how that works. And these switches happen. You could have a great marriage. You could have a great relationship. You could have a great co-parenting with an unplanned pregnancy where you guys just both plan on living separately. And something goes wrong, something gets tripped. And once that trip happens, it's not going to stop easily. You're going to have a bunch of wish-washy stuff going back and forth. And again, for a night of fun that you didn't plan on, where she's pissed off and saying you're the worst thing in the world, calling the cops, and the next day she says she made a mistake. But guess what? Those cops filed a report. It's going to be investigated by other people, and now the state's involved, DCFS or CPS is involved, and it's a totally different thing. It matters a lot less what she says, and they're going to look at the evidence that they have to see whether or not this did take place. Guess what happens there? You don't get to talk to them. You don't get to smooth talk them. And imagine that. You're standing in front of somebody that is now determining what is in the best interest of the child, and it's not you. It's a third party. And you're talking to them and you're saying, man, I'm a good dad. I do this, man. I go to softball with them, blah, 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 whatever the situation is. But for some reason, you're not handling the evidence that they're looking at properly, and they decide to err on the side of the caution. And they say, you know what, we need a temporary protective order, which means it depends on the state and county, but for 14 days, you cannot see your child. And if you attempt to, you automatically go to jail. And if she gets upset and can show that you're sending bad text messages because she started a heated argument or whatever the situation is, and you reply back, you are now violating that protective order and you go to jail. It's a horrible, horrible experience. So this flipping thing happens a lot. It goes back and forth, but once the state gets involved, you lose all power. Somebody else is determining one of the most, if not the most important thing in your life, your relationship with your child, and you are powerless in it. I've seen guys, and we've been talking about this quite a bit, but guys who are eagles, man, the most badass guys, pro fighters. They've done the hardest things. CEOs, people who just kill it in every single thing. When they're disempowered and their child is taken away from them, man, it is a whole different type of depression. It's a whole different type of trauma. Your brain fires off in a different way, and you're powerless. You never want to be in that situation.
You know, these are rules that are put in place to protect kids from when, you know, whether a father or mother is a piece of shit or is doing something bad. And they put these, you know, these regulations in place for a reason. But the challenge is that you could be the best parent in the fucking world and you get swept up into that because they don't really have a way of knowing what's what. So these are the kind of traps that you're looking to potentially get sucked into. And you have to understand that, you know, part of attraction is when someone's really, really attracted to you, they're very much kind of like, you know, in your frame, right? They're letting you lead and they're adopting your frame. And a lot of the time as a way to kind of like, if they decide like maybe there's someone more attractive than you, or maybe they want to be with somebody else, or maybe there's a better option than you, one of the ways that their mind is kind of evolved to, you know, disengage your frame, we call it an RAS flip. What's an RAS flip? RAS flip is where when they pedestalize you, if there was 97 things that were really good about you and 3 that they didn't like, they'll focus on the 97. But when they de-pedestalize you, because maybe just evolutionarily they want to move on to somebody else, hook up with somebody else, whatever, they'll tend to forget the 97% and they'll focus on the 3%. And they'll kind of loop on it, right? And that's actually a common way that people break up. That's why most people despise their exes, right? I actually don't. I actually love my exes. But a lot of people are like, oh, my fucking ex and da-da-da. well, that's natural. That's just kind of part of human mating. Like in a lot of ways, say that someone asks your ex about you and they're like, oh, fuck that guy. Like that could actually mean she kind of loves you, right? There's like a thin line between love and hate. Kind of means she probably still loves you a little bit. When she says she hates you, kind of still means she loves you. But the problem is that when you kind of involve this whole thing in it, this whole apparatus, and that gets weaponized, your life could be completely turned upside down. And now all of a sudden you can't even see your kid. So, I mean, again, it's a lot of information. I guess, like, again, we're just really, really, really trying to connect this to, a night of fun results in things that you don't even have a perspective on. And I guess, ultimately, I don't know how much more you have to say, and you can actually say anything else that you want. Okay, I'd love to. Yeah, let's get into that. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing that I want to emphasize is, like, condoms exist for a reason. Pulling out exists for a reason. We use with condoms. But also being aware of the birth control that your partner is using. And, these are things that exist for a reason. And you'll always be happy if you have a kid, but there's just so many smoother ways of getting there. But yeah, I'd love for you to talk about finance.
Yeah. So finances are a massive thing that we always hear about. We hear about the horror stories of men getting screwed over in these different things. But when we enter into this, and this was important for us to talk about, when you're a guy that has some success, when you're a guy that has business with multiple people, there's a lot of things that could go wrong, a lot of things that could go right, all these different things. But if you enter into a high conflict custody battle, they can get a forensic audit. They could go through everything that you have. They can request those things. If you have money going in different directions, but it still touches you, you're still responsible for it. And again, you might determine that in a certain way. The IRS may determine that in a certain way, but the state may not. And you really need to understand that. Once you have that examined, once you have somebody go through it all, once you have all of that looked into, you start subpoenaing your different business partners and whatnot. You can bring them up even as witnesses rather than get the actual accounting records from that. That is now evidence. Once that evidence goes into play, and if you don't have a gag order, meaning nobody can talk about anything, or the different documents are sealed, if you forget that, which it's pretty easy to do, and in this high stress situation when there's all sorts of moving parts, if you get blindsided by discovery in this case, which means when they request different information about you, and you put that in and it becomes organized in a court case, then let's say you get sued by your business partner, which we don't want to happen, but these things happen. They're common. It's a part of doing business sometimes. They can take those records and examine them. Let's say that's there. It's already there. It's already done for you. You get audited by the IRS, and there's something that isn't going to come up good. There's something you didn't take care of. Let's say you started a business and you didn't know how to do your taxes, and it comes up in your child support case, and let's say it was 3 years ago, and you get audited and that's there, that could be evidence that's used against you. Even if you're proper, you're good, you know how to do business now, you know how to pay your taxes, but if they want to dig deep, they can find that. And that's just something that somebody shouldn't have. But in addition to that, if you're going to enter this, you can enter into it pro se, but your best probability for getting a fair ruling that's going to be best for both the father and the mother in a child custody case is going to be when you have an attorney and you have a good attorney that's specialized in exactly what you're doing. Man, that's going to cost you. And it's going to cost you, I'd say minimum $10,000. It depends, again, where you're at, depends on the level of conflicts. But once we get into high conflict, it goes way up from there. And so what we got to start, it could go up to $900,000. That's what we've seen in our group. These are things that are very, very contentious when we have things like protective orders. A protective order is something when the state gets involved and removes your ability to be a father, no contact whatsoever, no anything, they message you, anything like that. You can't reply back. And it usually lasts for 2 years, but it can extend up to 4 or 5 or whatever.
How long was your protective order?
It was for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first one was 14 days, then it went up to 2 years almost immediately, and then it went to 4 years. And
you couldn't see your kids for 4 years.
Couldn't see your kids for 4 years.
What was like to eventually see them again?
Man, so this is another thing. When I was able to see my kids, the state of Texas did not have a reunification process involved. However, the reunification process, the first time I heard about it, I was like, man, this is a great idea. You have therapy, you have social workers working with you and your kids, but here's the problem. Almost every social worker I know is an awesome person. They're great. They love their job. They're some of the best resources in this. But a social worker may not timely communicate with a judge. You can also have something called the guardian ad litem, meaning somebody is coming in as an advocate to speak on the child's behalf, your ex-partner's behalf, to determine who is the best parent. All those people, when you have a social worker, when you have a therapist, you have a guardian ad litem, you have any of these different things, it gums up the system. So that means you show up to the judge, you prepared, you paid your attorney $7,000 to appear in court all day because they have to be there for 8 hours potentially, even though your case is only going to be 20 minutes. You're going to have 20 minutes, 30 minutes in front of a judge. This is not a trial, it's a hearing. A hearing just means you're in front of the judge and you can bring witnesses, but there's no jury and you don't get as much time to present. In that time, let's say everything's prepared on your side. Let's say she has a lazy lawyer or doesn't have a lawyer, has something that's unprepared. Oh man, we have to do a continuance. You paid $7,000 for a court appearance. This happens all the time just to get it continued to where you're going to have to pay $7,000 again, unless you decide to go in pro se. But when you have that reunification process, like let's say when you see your kids again, right? And the court or the state says, we want to have a therapist get involved. And that therapist doesn't file something properly, doesn't fill out the right paperwork. That social worker has a conflict that day or cancels on that day. You still have to pay your attorney. This is how the legal bills get up to the $900,000 range. You start getting things like forensic psych evals. You have to pay for that. You have to pay the therapist or psychologist or whoever is administrating that to interview your child, interview you, interview your ex, and then write a whole report on that. You have to pay for all of that. Now, let's say the court rules, and this is very common for both men and women, that the other party has to pay their legal expenses because you were in contempt, you didn't do something right, you were unprepared. These are all easy things to screw up in the court system if you do not know, especially when you're already stressed, you've been in 3 times in front of a judge, you're overwhelmed, you can't think straight, and man, let's say something goes wrong, right? You have to pay their court fees because you were unprepared. This happens all the time too. Let's say the court fees get awarded to you. She was in contempt. She did something wrong. If she can't pay, what's going to happen? What's the consequence? There's nothing. You're going to have to eat that. So you still, okay, so let's say she has to pay, but it takes her 10 years. You still had to pay your attorney's fees, which might be $14,000, $21,000.
Not to mention it's the mom of your kids, so it's like even if she does pay, it's just screwing your kid over anyway. So no win.
Yeah, it is one of the craziest things. And so this is why I say you have to be prepared, because the way these problems start is in the beginning. Again, if you're educated on this and let's say the cops get called, she gets hysterical, man. Something goes wrong. And the cops read a report. And if you don't understand how the law works, if you speak to the police and you don't need to, if you're unsure about something and there's a maybe and you continue to talk, you don't consult with a lawyer, you don't realize how this process is, you go into the attorney general's office for mediation unprepared, something gets signed, it's wrong, you need to amend it, you need to hire a lawyer, whether you're just hiring them for consultations or to sign off on something or proofread something with you, man, then you go into a hearing. You have to go into a hearing for that. Let's say something goes wrong there, you don't know what to do, man, protective order happens or something gets escalated in the system. Protective order is kind of harsh and that's really bad. You never want it. You need to prevent it. If you get a temporary protective order, do not let it go to a 2-year protective order. It will screw everything up, but it causes problems. But here's the biggest problem in this, right? We screw up in the beginning. We get distance from our kids. And being a father is beautiful. It's amazing. Like, I haven't talked about that enough. Owen has talked about it. It is a massive thing. It's a great thing. It's a gift. It's going to change you in all these ways, in great, great ways that they're even better if you don't have resistance in the beginning. But man, when these things happen and you, for some reason, because something's in limbo and they err on the side of caution, let's say you get a 14-day protective order, okay, it doesn't get signed, it doesn't get enacted to a 2-year one, but the courts are backed up for 3 months, you don't get to see your kids for 3 months. And then that court may say, well, let's start the reunification process. Let's bring in a social worker and a therapist to make sure everything goes well. And like I said, that social worker files something wrong, the guardian ad litem doesn't show up, is sick that day, and continuance happens. That continuance, hopefully it's in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, you don't get to see your kids, but more likely it's going to be something like 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months of where that continuance happens. And that causes damage to the child. So although the state, the therapist, the GAL, whoever is involved, the social workers, want to have their say to make things all right, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 2 days away from their dad or their mom, man, it causes a huge problem. And if there is high conflict, like parental alienation is starting to happen, in that dad or mom is dividing the family and is basically saying mom is bad or dad is bad or whatever it is, that also causes problems to the kids. And I wish parents knew how damaging that was, to take out their frustration on the other party to the children and involve them in the case, but most parents don't, and it happens all the time. It's really common, and it's almost never censured. It's almost never seen by the courts. Parental alienation, in order to prove it in a court of law, even if most states don't really recognize it, even though it's recognized by the psychological community and the damages are very well documented, man, most judges don't want to touch it. Most lawyers don't want to touch it. So it's allowed to happen, and it causes massive damage. The kids lose most. Everybody says that. But part of my thing is I want to show you how you can protect yourself from that so those kids don't lose most. And most of all, you will have your future. You'll have your sanity. You'll have less stress, and you'll be able to go back to whatever life is possible. But all this can be prevented if we're wiser about how we have our intimate relations with other people.
Yeah.
If we're sloppy with it.
The best method is prevention.
Right. We don't want to put ourselves in that situation.
What was it like seeing your kids after 4 years?
Man, it was crazy. This is one of the things I recommend for everybody is if you're going into a high tense situation, court, whatever, or seeing your kids for the first time, get on the phone with somebody before and afterwards. Man, I had a dream in my mind. Right. And this is very common for all the dads I talk to, because we're thinking for all that time we can't see them, whether it's for 30 days or for 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. And it was actually 5 years. And in that 5-year period, I had a dream of what it was going to be like to see them. It was going to be amazing. I was going to teach them all this stuff. We were going to do jujitsu together. We were going to do all these things that I'd done in my life. I was going to introduce them to things. I was so happy because there were many things that I changed in my life during that time. And they were uncomfortable. They didn't know what to think. To spare you the details of their specific personalities, but one really, really wanted to talk to me, but didn't know and only came from a memory that he had. The other one was just uncomfortable. And that stuck for a long time. I have great relationships with him. A lot of time has passed, but that's one of those scars that could have been avoided. And in my part in this that is huge, and in this I'm an absolute victim in it. But my part in it is I didn't do a lot responsibly from the beginning. And with total respect for their mother and all this sort of stuff, man, we could have been wiser about how we brought life into this world. But in addition to that, in the initial court process, man, there were so many mistakes I made, which is why I learned, which is why I came back to actually win in court with this and coach men on it. It's a really, really important thing for me.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're in your later 40s now, and you're an experienced guy, and you've had 2 relationships where, just like a lot of us, you've had 2 relationships that wound up in breakups, and you just happen to have, a lot of people have 2 relationships and breakups, and in both those cases, there was kids involved. And I remember one of the things that you told me was all those crazy things that came up from your first relationship with your second girl. She even said she knew, and you had bonded with her about the hell that you'd been through in your first relationship.
Yeah.
But then when she started to, realize that you guys were ending, and again, there's a theme here where people get into a custody dispute and they're both burning tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. They get to the point where they just want to win. And then I remember you were even saying to me that at one point she even came to you and said, oh, all that bad stuff that I even have said all along I never agreed with, that's going to be in my favor.
Yeah.
And then could you tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So let me just say, my relationship with the second mother of my kids was amazing. One of the best relationships. If we're talking about vetting people, it was great. There were so many things. And a lot of the things that we call red flags, we wouldn't be able to see them. And I don't even want to say that they were some giant thing that we saw in her. But the thing that happens is when people break up and they're afraid of losing their kids, they do crazy things. Men and women, we're both guilty of it. I watch it from the guy's side all the time. And with men, it's there too, the same exact thing. But she did some things that were where she was afraid for her children's life when she didn't need to be. There was no proof of it, no evidence of it. Believe me, she tried. And in trying that, one of the best things that happened in the previous case where I lost really bad, I ended up going to jail, got the protective order, all those things. Immediately after that, in that 5-year period was I started interviewing lawyers, talking to them, starting to put together different stuff for guys in my group that, were going through this, educating myself on it better. So once this happened, and just to put a timeline of this is really kind of an interesting thing. When we broke up, when I knew it was over, because for me, having a family was very important. Holding on to that was really, really important. And by all means, I think no man should ever have shame of that or thinking they're weak in some way. No, man, it's your kids. It's the best possible scenario, in my opinion, to have the mother and father there when it started that way. And that was the plan. But as soon as I knew that was over, lawyer, I already knew the lawyers. I had plenty of lawyers to consult with. And in 2 months, from a legitimate attempt that she tried to make of false accusations towards child abuse with me, she was stopped. And it was stopped because they were untrue. And it was stopped because it was a hysterical decision. Now, that hysterical decision, which I give...
And even knowing the hell that you had been through before.
Oh, yeah.
And then defaulted to that anyway.
Oh, yeah. She came to my court appearances in the first case and all this sort of stuff. Understood it all, man. I understood it all from the beginning.
And then just went, oh, that's a template for how to handle our situation.
In some ways, it was even worse from that. It was that she had said, if you try to do anything, so in Texas, you can record conversations. And that's what I started doing when the problem started happening. Is she said, if you try and do anything, I'm going to use your old case against you and I'm going to ruin your life. And I couldn't believe it when I was hearing it.
Because you probably bonded about how traumatizing this was.
Yeah. No, we walked like it was. Losing your kids is a horrific, unexplainable situation. And I'll even talk about the situation a little bit because in 2 months, I reversed it all. But just because I reversed it all legally and had full legal power, how that happened was we immediately did depositions, we hit discovery, we had all this different stuff. We came in prepared. We forced the situation, my attorney and I. In that deposition, we both were deposed. In a deposition, you're sworn under oath. Both attorney or the opposing counsel's attorney interviews you while your attorney's present, if you have one, and it's all recorded. And so you can record it via stenographer, which is almost always there. They're sworn into oath. You're sworn into oath, and we also had it videotaped. So in that situation, man, she ended up really bad. It ended up terrible for her. When we walked out of that, my attorney said, hey, look, Steve, we could take away the kids from her. I could go to the courthouse right now and get a 14-day protective order against her. We could start this process. You will get full custody. She'll be backed into a corner. So this is one of these things that we talk about legally, is that if you get this on you as a man, you're starting out in defense. You don't get to say you're a good father. You're arguing first, paying thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars minimum. Protective order, $60,000, man. That's where you're starting at. So, and it's going to go up from there. But once that happens, you're just defending that you didn't do that. You don't even get to say you're a good dad or how custody or visitation is going to be determined. You don't even get that argument. So you don't want that. And he said, I had that. I did have that. He had other cases that could have come from that because.
And you're even saying that actually the judge from your old case came in and spoke up for you and said it was a mistake or something.
No, it was actually the mother of the other children came to testify. But let's get to this. So at that point, 2 months after, almost to the day, it was actually 59 days after we split up, I had all the power. But guess what happened? She kept delaying. She didn't want to sign. Her attorney wanted to be amicable. We could have gone to the courthouse with the evidence that we had, and we could have started other cases that she talked about under oath and whatnot that I could have sued her for in civil court, well, family law is civil, but that I could have sued her for. I could have started, there could have been possibly maybe a criminal case started in that were separate, all from that evidence. We had all of that. And I withheld it. And one of the reasons why I withheld it was because I had people in my corner. I'd had a protective order put on me. So many guys listen to this and they go, man, she wanted to do that to you. She wanted to make up a lie, use your old case against you that was unjust, and later on become admitted to be unjust. She wanted to use that so that you would go to prison or jail or state jail, in a state jail that specializes in people who abuse kids. Those are the worst jails to be in, the worst state jails to be in, the worst prisons to be in. The worst things happen in those. That may have not been her direct intent, but what she put in order would have done that. Absolutely, if she would have gotten her way in that, involved the police and all these different things. And I had that power to put a protective order on her. But I wasn't thinking straight. Nobody's thinking straight in this. So what did I have? I had my attorney. I had other attorneys. I had other people that I trusted, that I had vetted to help make decisions for me. And before all this, myself, my attorney, all those different people said, what did I want? I wanted to get fair visitation, custody, child support. I wanted that there. I wanted all false abuse claims towards children to be wiped off the table, to not be existed. Any of that. And then I wanted her to be stopped. That third thing is really important because when we get wound up in this, men and women, you're going to be crazy if you're going through this. You're not going to be thinking straight. I wanted it to be stopped, and I wanted it to be stopped by law in the most intimidating way, not to intimidate somebody to scare them, but to stop them from continuing to cause problems with my kids. If we're going to be apart, it's got to be civil and it's got to be working. Really, really important. But wouldn't sign. COVID happened. Courts stop. So guess what happens? From COVID let's say March 2020 to August 2020, I did not get to see my kids. I got to do phone calls with my kids, but I did not get to see them because of that leverage. At that point, well, maybe in June or July, we said, okay, we're going for a hearing. $7,000 more. In that hearing, her attorney fired her. She showed up pro se. We were ready. The mother of my older kids who had made the claims against me years ago came up to testify and say under oath that it was an overreaction of the courts and that Steve is a great father and these things, there's no fear. I've never seen any of these things happen. I wish she would have said that 10 years prior to that, but she came up to testify in that. But here's what happened. I paid $7,000 to prepare everything that we had in case we needed to step forward in that hearing. Here's what happened in the hearing. The judge said, hey, look, to her, you don't have a case here. I don't know what you're asking for, but if you're asking me to sign this and go through this, it could probably get worse. That's what I'm guessing. And they've been giving you a fair agreement for 9 months. I'd really advise you to sign it. He talked to her a little bit privately. This was all via Zoom, and she came back and signed it. That's what I paid $7,000 for. $7,000 for that. And you know what? It was worth it because it all worked out. And I know it could have been much more. But overall, in that case, I think I paid $23,000 for everything. That's huge. In my case, in that situation, slam dunk.
Yeah, to think that $23K is on the low end of this, right?
And to think that that's a slam dunk. $23K.
Yeah, only $23K.
Only $23,000 in 9 months of conflict.
Yeah, and like to get treated like relatively fair, you know,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Boom. Winning.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess you know we're about an hour and 20 in, so we're gonna go a couple more minutes here, right?
Yeah.
So if you stay this long, we're gonna go a couple more minutes. This is I'm gonna end here with a really rough question, and this really sucks, and I hate fucking talking about this. What is your opinion of marriage without prenup? Mm-hmm. But perhaps even just as important is what's your opinion of marriage with prenup? Mm-hmm. And you know, again, we're pro family, love families. We want you to have a family, but what do they get themselves into?
Man, well, this is
we'll wrap it about an hour 30. So
excellent question. I'm going to answer this easily. If you think a prenup solves your problems, it doesn't. It doesn't. It helps guide, but everything can be contested and everything can change. I'm just telling you this. If you think, all right, that a prenup that's drawn up by a great lawyer is going to solve all your problems in case anything goes wrong, it's going to help. It's going to help guide things. But that doesn't mean anything, man. Everything can be contested. You're still going to have lawyers. It's still going to be expensive. There's still going to be arguments. And so prenups can go for things like custody, but that all changes, especially in the court's eyes, right? Especially in the court's eyes with custody, with children, on what you think is going to happen in a prenup. It really all goes out the window. And in some states, you may not even be able to do it to predict what's going to happen with kids. But in property, things like alimony or spousal support. So divorce is different than divorce and custody, but divorce is only going to deal with two things. It's going to deal with property, okay? And it's going to deal with alimony or spousal support. If you have kids, it's going to deal with custody, okay? So it's a fairly simple equation for all of this, but it gets crazily complicated. And if you have a prenup about your property, if you have a prenup about what alimony might look like, all that can be argued by her. All of it. And a good lawyer can really argue it. And your lawyer needs to defend it. And basically, here's what happens. Here's what happens in these cases, and it's the worst things. And this is where people, one of the other reasons why people hate lawyers is it just goes back and forth between each lawyer.
Yeah, it's like you can't just break up and go your separate ways like two adults. You've involved the state into your relationship. And like, for what? Was there even any perk to the legal marriage?
Oh, look, man, we're entering and this is one of the things where in the comments it's like, never get married, never have kids. You're setting yourself up to fail if you just have that and you're not educating yourself in how this works. Because if you educate yourself, you can stop these things almost immediately. So if you're going through a separation and you have a prenup and you are married, and check this out, man, so in some states they have common law, which is real easy to determine that you're married. Like in the state of Texas, almost anybody can say they're married. If on social media you say, this is my hubby or this is my wife, and you're just joking around and you've cohabitated for over 24 hours, I forget the exactness of it, but you can pretty easily fight for marriage. But in most states, well, it really depends on your state. That's why you need to know. But in many, many states, if you're cohabitating together and you bought something together and you're arguing over a couch or a lamp or something like that, the attorneys can eat that up. In front of a judge may rule on it and just say, man, forget it. It all goes to them. But these things are huge. If you leased something with somebody, man, it's crazy. Cars, whatever, dogs, cats are considered property, all pets. Well, at least in most states, it's a huge thing that people argue over. And in these cases, man, this is crazy. We'll have guys who are going through a divorce or a custody battle, and they don't have their dog with them, and they can't see their dog. It's horrible because you're going through an emotional time. You want man's best friend. You want your cat. You want your fish, whatever it is, and that's being kept from you. Seriously, man, it's the fish is the worst. But dogs are huge. Yeah, they come up with people like massively. It just wrecks them in all these different ways. So marriage with a prenup, be careful, do it. It could be used as something to be like, hey, let's not go too further.
Is there even any, like, think about this. Like, think of all the different relationships you've had. We're like, yeah, you had a great couple years and it was amazing and you had a lot of fun. And it's like, just go your separate fucking ways. I mean, I almost feel like, with the amount of money that I poured into some of those relationships, I almost feel like I hate to say it, but like there's two different frames of this, right? It's like, oh, well, they're used to like a certain lifestyle. You should continue to support. Like, how about like, I thought this was going all the way, and if I knew it wasn't going to, I wouldn't have burned all that money. And not that I'd ever actually ask for this, but like a funny little kid part of me almost was like, pay me that shit back. I'm not saying that I would. Obviously, that's pretty pathetic if you would say that. You're being the man. But I'm just saying, like, go your separate fucking ways.
Yeah.
But it's like you're going to drag all this shit into it, the fucking cat and the goldfish and the couch and the dog and and you're sitting in these fucking fluorescent fucking rooms with a government worker. It's like, bro, chill out, do your thing, but is there, and like, again, like believer in family and all that, but like, is there any upside to marriage? Like, is there a reason why, or is it just to shut the person up so that they'll, stop bugging you for it? And to be real with you, like, again, I believe in lifelong partnerships and even the concept of marriage, but like, just why would someone even think to say, go to the government and tell them that we're doing this? I find it almost like kind of a little crazy where it's like, why not just like say that and again, they can get common law anyway in some states, but like, why not just say like, we're doing this and do the ceremony, do whatever. Like what's the government have to do with this? Like some weird office. Like, is there even an upside to marriage, or like maybe a couple tax benefits, or like access in like in a hospital or something? Like, I mean, they really find a way to make it not even that appealing. Yeah. You think they'd at least give you something? Yeah. Give them $1,000. But it's like, is there anything? Yeah. Is there a reason to do it?
Yeah. Man, look, I'm in agreement with you. At least I think of what you think. I am all for partnerships, and I was never legally married to anybody, and that still didn't prevent all of the issues, but man, the idea of what marriage is in our culture is now defined by what happens legally. It's not by two people deciding anything. And this becomes so problematic, like even in these kind of like in the meta level of things, is that because of this, our culture has taught women and men to fight it like that. Instead of being look, okay, be two adults and talk. But if she's taking the kids away from me and not letting me see them and being hysterical in whatever ways, that's not happening. So I have to then legally take action. And the same goes vice versa if the man's doing that and so on. But in our idea of what marriage is, it's a fantasy. But that being said, it doesn't mean you just get to say, man, I'm never getting married. Because here's the thing, and we were talking about this beforehand. If you don't have experience with women, if you don't have an experience with love, if you don't have experience with the acts of intimacy, of sex, you are going to think unclearly in those states no matter what. If you fall in love and she starts saying, man, I want to be married, I want to be married, I want to have the dream, I want to have a big wedding, I want to have da 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 da, I want to involve my family, I want this and that, it's very easy to say yes to if you do not have experience in that. And one of my problems, man, is I think a lot of advice to men is given by inexperienced men. They're talking about theory. That theory could be right. But I really think, and we've talked about this a lot, is that when you start getting, you get advice from men who are not experienced or who haven't had relationships with women, who haven't been in love, who haven't learned how to manage those questions, we kill off the ability to have wisdom. Meaning, I need experience. But Owen and I need to talk about his experience and my experience in order to have wisdom in what relationships are like. Because I know that when I fall in love, I'm not thinking clearly. Well, if I just talk to somebody else that doesn't have experience like Owen, I'm going to get bad advice. I'm going to get theoretical advice. I'm going to get quick answers that don't work in high pressure situations where I'm forced to make a decision quick and I'm going to react. But I want to start reacting with somebody good in my corner who has the experience of what love is like, of what it's like, man, you know, God, what about not having condoms? You know, what about that? Like, what about when you make a mistake? I need to have a real...
love that girl, and it's like, come at me, baby, marry me, baby. It's just like, yes. It's like a trance of yes.
Yeah.
You know, and you're seeing the most loving, amazing person in the world. You don't know, you understand. The way that most breakups happen is with an RAS flip, where they go from pedestalization to depedestalization. And that's part of their way of getting out, is to like kind of think you suck shit and to see it in the worst way possible. But the thing is like, that's how people go their separate ways oftentimes. Sometimes they're also amicable, like conscious uncoupling can happen too. A lot of times there's a thin line between love and hate. It can happen, you know, and I'm actually amazing friends with about 90% of my exes. Like bro, like people come to me to ask for advice on how to be friends with exes. Like I have exes that I hang out with and they're like, how do you guys know each other? And we're like, we're exes. And like, it fucks with people's heads that two exes could be that good of friends. I'll introduce you to a couple of my exes. Like they're literally some of my best friends. I give them advice on guys and stuff. Like I just have known them so long that we have so much comfort with each other. And like, it's actually a big thing for me to know that when they get their next boyfriend, that he won't be mad at like thinking that I'm fucking her. So like, when I give a hug to an ex, I'm very just like, like it's like such a wall of non-sexuality because we've been there, you know, because sometimes they'll say like, hey, how come we don't give it another try? We get along so great. It's like, look, we've done that. We've been down that road. We wouldn't have left if we didn't try everything. So, you know, we're real friends. You're family to me. I love you, you know, as family. It's like an even deeper love in some ways than just passion and sex. You know, you're family to me without sex. Like that is so meaningful to me. And that can happen. But usually there's a period of 2 to 5 years where we haven't talked because the initial RAS flip happened, you know, and that's when you kind of come back and like I've gone back to exes and like, cried in front of them and said, I'm really, really sorry for my role in like the deterioration of our relationship. And like, that wasn't how I went into it. I'm really, really sorry. And I'm your friend, you know, and we can, and if you can actually heal that, and also the cool thing about crying is I think you're a beta male. So they won't get attracted again. Because if you want to reattract, you do something totally different. But I don't want to reattract. I even talk a little bit beta. I'm like, hey, like, you know, right? Like that. So to avoid the attraction, but you still get it anyway. But the point is you can still kind of wall it off. So the thing is like, you can wall it off to the point that you care about the friendship. And so I have these amazing, amazing friendships with exes, but there's definitely like a period with the RAS flip, and it's really sad actually, and it's pretty gutting. I mean, even like basic breakup can be one of the most without marriage and kids, could be one of the most gutting things a man has. You think that's gutting? You involve custody, even more gutting. Marriage with a prenup and kids and custody, even more gutting. Marriage, no prenup, with kids, now you're broken up, even more gutting. Breakup with marriage, with no prenup, with kids, with contentiousness. And you're going to see a man, could be a woman too, ready to end it all. And, you know, you've seen a lot of this, right? You've known people
Yeah.
who did end it, and
Oh,
you've
yeah,
known
yeah.
people that were on the verge of ending it.
Yeah.
And so that's why, you know, and like, again, like, just like that, hit it raw, baby, hit it from the back. Next thing you know, that's like leads to a chain of events where the dude's like ready to blow his own brains out. And like, again, don't do that. Like, there's a way that, like, the two messages here are, first of all, don't even begin down this trajectory. That's the first message. We kind of began this video joking with, like, you know, you met each other, kind of showing the fun, and then going, blah, the crazy shit could happen. Use protection, pull out, be careful, whether in or out of a relationship, be aware. But then second of all, if something does go to shit, well, at least now you're getting some kind of prediction of where it can go. But I think a message that you'd also have is like, you're going to survive. And you've been through here and you have survived.
No, there's a few things that you said that I want to roll out on this that are really important. In the first 2 months, even if it's just a casual thing and it's an unplanned pregnancy or was planned or whatever, if that break happens, very common in those first 2 months for men to consider suicide and these types of things. It is common and normal, but it is abnormal and it's unhealthy. It's mentally unhealthy. You need to get help. And this is where I would definitely say, you know, consider or go get a therapist, get a psychologist or psychiatrist if you need. You need to look at that. But this is where I would say definitely reach out to me and look at some of the services that I offer. It is huge. You can get past it. But I want to also say this because it's so important to have a role with your kids. And the stepdad to my older kids is one of my closest friends, an amazing guy. We hang out all the time. We joke around. We're better friends than I am to the mother, but I'm still friends with her. But it's crazy and it's awesome. And we'll go out, we'll go to business meetings together and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, oh, we co-parent together. People are like, what? What are you talking about? And we sit there and talk about, joke about it. It's
be that easy?
And so these things are possible, but they're possible not because we just stewed in hate. You're going to be angry. You can be angry. Like all this stuff about forgiveness and whatever. People who've never been through it are giving advice on it, and this is why it's horrible. This is why you got to talk to people with experience. Like if I'm going through something, I'm going to talk to Owen. This is really important because he has rich experience in this. This isn't coming from just theory. It's theory of the highest level, moving into somebody who's experienced it and gone through those tough choices. And so when I'm telling you, like it can be good, even if you fight, even if you have to fight in court, even if you lose and even if you win, man, it is one of the funniest things. So the stepdad to my kids, awesome guy. We're always hanging out. We talk to each other about tons of different stuff. We go out together. We raise the kids together. We go out with the kids together. And it's just one of the coolest things. That wasn't something easy to do. That wasn't something even I could comprehend. But you need to start seeing that this finish line is different than you just being angry, feeling victimized, being suicidal, having PTSD. All those things can happen and we can walk you through them. But the goal is to really not have the state determine what's in the best interest for the children, but good parents determine what's in the best interest for the children. It's really, really important. And if you need somebody to walk through that hate, that time of not being able to forgive, of not being able to do that, it can last a long time. It's okay. That's where things like that I offer, my services, come into play, and they're huge for you.
Yeah, and by the way, we have no affiliate commission or anything like that. I brought Steve here because I believe in what it is that he does. So, you know, because, I mean, the internet's so fucking stupid. They're going to be like, now you're trying to cross-sell. Like, it's like, shut the fuck up, okay? You know, this is the kind of thing where I bring, like sadly, some people who watch this are so fucking dumb that the only message they can take from it is, like, never get laid again. You know, and the funny thing is that you're still out there getting laid.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You know, you're not just like sitting at home in fear, right? It's just called use a fucking condom, pull out, be fucking aware, be aware who you're dating, check in on the contraception, make sure that you're involved in that process. You know, it's also, I mean, like, look, I mean, during, you know, like the lockdown in 2020 and stuff like that, I wasn't somebody who lived in fear in my life. Look, I've got a completely broken leg right now, comminuted fracture, shattered in a million different ways. I'm running around in a wheelchair. I don't regret that I went skiing, you know, and if I ever am able to stand up again, I'm going skiing again. So, you know, I'm not somebody who lives my life in fucking fear. You know, you've seen all the crazy shit that's popped off on us on the internet, like 2014 and shit. You don't see us stop being involved in the internet. It's like life is life. And, you know, you go on, you take bruises, you get beat, you get your fucking ass whooped. So don't live your life in fear. I mean, unless you just choose to be celibate as a conscious choice. And there could be wisdom in that too, to be honest with you. I'm just saying, you know, make a choice not from fear. You know, make a choice from a conscious decision based on weighing of different, you risk profile, benefit reward. I mean, there's a risk to just sitting in your house doing nothing your whole life. It's quite boring, right? So and we all live with that risk. It's like I personally like to drive in a car, but the thing is, like, if I got killed in a car, I kind of wish that I would have just sat at home my whole life, right? But the thing is, like, you don't know that at the time, so we take chances. But I do think that when it comes to sex, that the odds of successfully pulling out indefinitely are zero. Yeah. I know guys that have gone 10 years plus with thinking they have amazing pullout game, and then in the 11th year, boom. And the problem is and here's the crazy part. Some dude could have gone, it could be you, could have been having flings and having fun for 20 fucking years. But there's work that actually went into that. You had to get up, get dressed, go out, walk around, socialize, meet people, and you go do all this stuff to have all these flings. It goes wrong one time. And all that work that you put in, you wish that you would have fucking done. You will wish that you would have been a fucking virgin sitting in your fucking house. So avoid it. Just fucking avoid it. Strap up. And so all this crazy information overload that we've done here, I mean, we're now at like an hour and 40. All this information overload, the main message again is protect yourself. But then from there, if something happens, we're here to help you power through it. Okay, and you're going to power through it, and it's going to be hell. We're not going to lie to you. It's going to be fucking hell, but you're going to get through it. And you're going to have a kid out of it, and you're never going to regret that. But of course, if you can avoid it, let's avoid that as well, okay? That's my message I want to leave you with, and based on experience I had. Any other last thoughts on this?
No, man, pro dad. It's a good message.
Thank you, man. Both fathers. Father of 3, father of 4. I'm going to catch up, but hopefully planned. We'll see how I do. I'll see how you both do, right? We're back here another year, like, more of these kids, here's the crackhead back here. But, it's these are things that you can do strategically. Vet. Build your life out. Curate your life. And curate the person who it is that you have kids with. That's our message for today. Bro, thank you for being here. That's fucking incredible, man.
Yeah,
thank you so much, bro.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace.